Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Tabletop Express. We are here for the favorite series, which arguably the largest one besides Creators Corner here on the channel. And we're going to talk about the unsung heroes of board games.
Yes.
By unsung heroes, we mean those underrated games that just don't get enough love.
Yeah, we're going to sing their praises.
Yes,
we are indeed.
Will we? I can't promise harmony, but I can promise. I don't even want to promise singing. That seems like that would be.
Aw.
That might turn people away.
All right, we'll do the musical episode later.
You don't want to hear us sing.
Yeah.
But I am joined as always by, not as always, but as often by Ryan Espin. Ryan Clements is also back here on the channel. Ryan
again
in those chatter boxes chatting with us anyways. So great to have you back here on the video. Let's talk about this, little guys.
Yeah.
Let's break it down. Ryan Espin, actually, why don't you break down our rules, because we put a few rules together about this.
We have a couple rules about this one. So the first and foremost rule, this list is comprised of board games that are outside of Board Game Geek's top 1,000. Okay, so if it's ranked 1,001 or higher, like in terms of higher, like descending, I guess, it could fall on this list. Okay, so Monopoly is going to be on here. Scrabble's going to be on here. Actually, I think Scrabble might be in the top 1,000. Shoots and Ladders. Those games could fall in it, but there's some other rules. It should, right? Or are we all following the same rules? I know the other rule. The other rule is the game cannot be very recent. It has to be at the latest a 2019 release on board.
Yeah. We definitely didn't want to start dropping 2020 games or ones that just came out. I mean, if I was to say Hadrian's Wall, no, Hadrian's Wall didn't just bust in. I don't even actually know where Hadrian's Wall is, but it didn't bust in the top 100. But I love it, So
yeah, give it a little bit of time to gain its rank.
Yeah, exactly.
I know personally, I also picked only games that I've rated 8 or above on Board Game Geek, and games that have a pretty low rating in terms of number of people rating. So I think the lowest I have is like 500 something people voted. So
yeah, I don't know, but I have quite those. I have some that are higher. Mine was very much based on, for me, games I have played and own that I felt were just, you don't hear talked about all the time.
Yeah.
So it was not necessarily rating. There's one or two that have quite a few ratings, but I feel really strongly are underrated, and a bunch of them I know have under 1,000 ratings as well. So and I also know at least 3 of them do.
I also excluded any 18xx title, so there's no.
That's gonna be hard for you.
I know. I can make one of just 5 of those that are outside the board game top 1,000.
That probably just cut about more than half your list.
It did actually. So.
Well, let's have some fun, guys. We are going to actually
wait. Did you do any special things, Squirrel?
Yeah.
I feel like Squirrel must have.
I mean, I had a list of about 10 to 15 games, but I guess I just went ahead and tried to separate it out based on the year that it came out. I didn't want them all to be around 2019, 2018, but at the same time, there are games that either I have in my collection. Actually, I have every single one of these in my collection right now, so that's a good thing to note.
Yeah.
But aside from that, there's also games that have been talked about and are out on BGA, and I won't mention them, but there are a couple of games that I just feel like haven't been talked about really at all, and I only have one on here that I'm sure a lot of people have heard about, or maybe 2, but it's mostly on the sold piles, and it's baffling me. So I wanted to get these out there again. So that's my list.
I'll make one more note before I take us into Ryan Espin's first pick.
Yeah.
And that is all mine are actually rated 7 or less as the overall rating on Board Game Geek. So they had a slightly, and that was not planned. That's just how it kind of worked out.
Cool.
And I had written a note down about that. So, but hey, let's get into this. Let's talk about it. Ryan, what is your first one?
All right, my number 5 falls in that category of 7 or less. This is a cooperative dexterity game that mixes 2 big board games together. This is, I'll pull it out right now. This is Flick 'em Up, Dead of Winter. Now, full disclosure, I have both Flick 'em Up and Dead of Winter. I like this better than both of those. And let me talk about how this game works. So in Flick 'em Up Dead of Winter, it's a co-op game where you're taking out zombies and trying to do different objectives based on whatever scenario. But in reality, you're just working together, just flicking zombies and trying to survive. As the game goes on, when you flick your pieces, you get to cause noise, just like how Dead of Winter was, where in Dead of Winter, you cause noise by doing specific actions and more zombies will come. This is very similar to that regard, where when you cause noise by shooting or doing some kinds of actions that cause noise, zombies will be added to the top of that. You see that dice tower thing over there that says dead inside? So all the zombies get stacked on there. And then when it's time for zombies to attack, you pull this lever off. They come down this tower and they just maul the board. And they just start taking out people. And if you get hit and lose damage. You lose health. And yeah, it's a really cool system. I love that system in a co-op dexterity game. And co-op dexterity games in general are pretty awesome. This one, Steel Team Flicks, is great. And I haven't done Flip Chips yet, but I know, Squirrel, you've played Flip Chips and you enjoyed that one.
I have your copy right here.
You have my copy, I know. So we're gonna play that soon. But yeah, I am really enjoying Flick 'em Up Dead of Winter. I got it during the pandemic, and I've been playing it solo, and it's really fun solo. There's nothing wrong with playing with toys and stuff. So it's a great game. I highly recommend it for anyone. If you see it in a bargain bin, pick it up. Because I know at a point it became a bargain bin item. I know there was a lot of buzz when it came out, and then it just died out. So,
and is it fit in that same Dead of Winter universe then? Because Dead of Winter really is with the same type of buildings.
Yeah, they have the same characters too.
Also, the dog is the dog in the.
So I think the dog is a promo.
The dog.
Sparky is a promo, I believe. But it's got you got your little people that you could start off with, their health and their starting weapon. And then where are the pieces? I have them in here, but they're gorgeous. They're nice plastic. They're good chunky plastic too. And yeah, if you've played Flick 'em Up before, you should know the quality of some of this stuff. Here's the character, and they have little backpacks and stuff, and these are the zombies. It's really cool. I really like it. There's oil drums, just for the parade itself.
It seems very thematic with the game itself, the original Dead of Winter. So that's why I asked that question.
Yeah, and it's better than both, in my opinion. I feel like Dead of Winter gets a little bit too long with some of the deck milling, and Flick 'em Up is great at 2, but again, that could just drag 2. There's a lot of scenarios that really just don't follow scenarios. Just try beating each other up until one person wins.
2 quick questions about it, if you don't mind.
Sure.
The first one, like Dead of Winter, does it have a trader role?
So I believe there was actual rules where you could do a trader role. There were some secret objectives that you can do. Yeah, and there's betray objectives too. There's 6 of them.
Oh, nice.
In there as well too.
And when the zombies come out of the dead inside,
the zombie tower,
whatever they hit, do they become zombies too?
They don't become zombies too. They just get removed from the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
That seems really interesting though. Really
fun.
The presence looks amazing in itself.
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's so cool. And yeah, I can't wait to play this one again because it's fun.
Well, I bet Ryan likes playing the one that he picked, I would hope. So what's your number 5?
Well, I remember joining, I think the first thing I joined of your streams was the Marvel episode, where top 5 Marvel games. I don't remember if you remember that one. That wasn't that long ago. But within that, I would have put this game. And this game is Marvel Heroes. Marvel Heroes is a game that is amazing in itself just because it has the Fantastic Four, and like I mentioned before, if Marvel Champions gets Fantastic Four, I will play it, or if it gets Squirrel Girl, I will play it. But in this game, there are 4 factions. It's the X-Men, it's the Fantastic Four, it's the Avengers, and it's the Marvel Defenders. And the interesting thing about this is you get 4 characters of that, and you get each individual board, which has individual powers depending on if they're the active character or they're supporting. If they're supporting, you can put them on the map and they will add benefits to whoever's actually in the city doing what are known as headlines or stories and trying to defeat the bad guys. But the cool and interesting mechanic about this entire thing, aside from putting it on the board and doing the headlines or getting the story, is the fact that whatever faction you are, so say for example, you are the Marvel Defenders and your opponent is also heroes, but whoever is to your, I believe it's to your left or clockwise, is your villain. So they are playing the role of their own heroes and they're also playing your villain. And whoever's to their clockwise is whoever they are, that player is their villain, and it keeps on going. So there's always something to do on a turn for the most part, where if you are the heroes and you're trying to complete an objective, then the villain can stop you by playing out from a deck of villain cards. They can play out cards and then they can play support cards under those villains to enhance their own defense against it and try to stop you from completing your objectives. And then after your turn is done, it's their turn. They're going to try to use their heroes and complete objectives. So it's kind of a nice push and pull on either side of you. It's really fantastic. No pun intended. But I think this is a well overlooked Marvel game. It is rather old. It's 2006. So if people haven't heard of it, I don't know why. It is also Fantasy Flight. So there are reasons why you should know this game, but I just haven't heard much buzz about this at all. I found it when I was trying to do a trade and I said, sure, I'll give it a shot. And I am glad that I did. It is a really fantastic game, I think. And I believe it's going to be best at 4. But it's a semi-long game, but it's a really, really fun game other than that.
So I have a question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
One thing you just, so you don't have to take the villainous actions, or you're required to take the villainous act. Like it.
If you want to, you have to. For the most part, you have the option of enhancing your own villains. How it works though is if you do a headline, each headline has a number represented to it, and that represents trouble. And you as the hero can decrease the trouble, but whatever trouble remains, the villain can use those many action points to send out villains or enhance their villain. But you only send out one villain and you enhance that one villain. That's all you get to do. So you don't have to per se. You can play a villain. You can just let them have the objective, but there's no reason why you wouldn't want to. You need to stop them.
It reminds me of the way you're even talking when you talk about, like, I almost think of like what's villainous now, where you're playing the villain. It's not the exact same, I know, but that idea of, you know,
you're doing the fate deck on the other players. Right?
Yeah, you've got the fate deck exactly for that other player. So. Yeah.
I would assume it wasn't as popular because the MCU wasn't a thing at that point, right? This is the period.
2006.
Right. This is what like Iron Man 3 came out at like maybe a year or two before that. Right.
Yeah, Iron Man blew up shortly after that, so that was the takeoff. So that's really interesting.
I mean, you could tell because the Fantastic Four are on the cover and the X-Men are on the cover. So you can definitely tell it's pre-MCU. You know?
And if you couldn't tell just because of the picture that was displayed there, they are 20 full colored miniatures and they're fantastic. They're great.
Let's bring that back up actually so people can see. Just take a look at that board. No, it's really interesting. I like, again, this is one I'd like to play. I'd like to try it out.
We're gonna
having not played it. So
next month.
definitely will. Yeah.
Dr. Doom's in it.
I will say, that definitely didn't make the Marvel list, I know, but having not played it, that was obviously all things played. So maybe that would crack the top 5 if I played it.
That was the one that was like, I want to play it. I couldn't put it on the list because I didn't play. I'm sure it could have been on the list. Same goes for Heroescape. You know, I heard a lot of great things about Heroescape. A lot of people love that system. And the other one, I forget the name of it. Oh, Crisis Protocol, Marvel Crisis Protocol.
Right.
Yeah. Well, mine is the only party game that I included, and I included it because I do this particular game a lot with dinner, but it's a great way I found to introduce set collection to people. It's just a genuinely fun game. that you don't feel bad because you're not intentionally going to do something that causes, most of the time you're not intentionally doing something that's causing frustration for someone, but on occasion you're going to be taking the same card and then the card goes into the discard pile. And that's a really fun little game. Game Right Games, who does great stuff, has this one out, and that is Go Nuts for Donuts. This one actually is ranked overall at 2,442 and 708 in family games. And I don't know, I like this better than most family games in my house to play with my family. It's not going to be all the games after this are nothing like this, to be quite honest. But I wanted to mention this because I just think it's just a fun little game that deserves to be higher up. Now, it is a game where you are essentially going to be laying cards out on the table, and you're going to be laying one more card on the table than there are players. You've got numbered cards that you're going to play down and reveal, and then everyone's going to take the card for the number that they picked, unless you've both picked the same number. So you're trying to set collect, but at the same time that you're trying to set collect, you're trying to think about what your opponents don't want, or I suppose in some cases what they might want if you do want to stop someone trying to take over. But it is set collection in a nutshell. You have some very obvious point systems. There's some promo cards for it. There's actually I forget what it is. It's like a zombie donut promo card for some reason, which is great. My son will not let me play with it because he doesn't like zombies, but
it's good for him. I agree with him. Flick him up dead of winter.
But it's fun. It's a really fun game, and this is the most basic game probably that I'm going to talk about. But for me, where it falls in the family ranking and the overall ranking, which is what really mattered, and for this case, I just thought it was way too high up. So for me, I had to mention Go Nuts for Donuts. It's a fun game, great for families, great for dinner, and I'm very appropriate for some of the people I know who watch this channel. So that's for me. Number 5, Go Nuts for Donuts.
Donuts for dinner. You must be a cool dad.
The color scheming in this reminds me of Machikoro for some reason, and also the pictures kind of could remind me of Sushi Go.
Sushi Go, yeah. I think it's the same artist, right? Because Game Right is the same publisher.
Yeah, the artist for this one, just for everyone to know, is Claire Donaldson. I would have to double.
I could be wrong.
Claire Donaldson, she's done Food Truck Champion. Claire Donaldson's done a lot, actually. But Food Truck Champions, which I have heard decent things about, but I've never played. I do not know that that's the one she's done. I'd have to check, but yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, I like the art. It's fun. It's definitely colorful and bright. Again, it's not a game that's I'm saying is like a top 100 or a top 500 game, but it's just a great game in my opinion that is better than a lot of the garbage party games that are out there.
I'll give you that. I played it before. I'll give you that. Yeah. I'll give it another shot, but yeah, it's definitely better than a lot of other party games.
It's good with it's really fun when you get to 4, 5, 6 people. That's what I will say. Like it ramps up in a lot of fun that way because it gets a little crazy. It gets really crazy.
Played with.
You can play with a lot. I'm excited to hear your number 4 though, because
segue.
Yeah, I'm excited because I believe on this list somewhere is going to be it may be something that is a newer acquisition at some point for you, and I don't know where it falls because I didn't actually look at the list.
Oh, okay. Well, my number 4 is something that I bought in anticipation for a potential list we were going to do about comic-related board games that are not like Marvel and DC.
Yes.
So, and if we do, it would probably be number 1 at the moment, and this is Hellboy, the board game. Now, full disclosure, I only knew like the Ron Perlman movie before I checked this out. I listened to a review on Hellboy, and it seemed like a game that I would want to try. So I watched some gameplay videos of it, and it became a game that, okay, if I could get it, the Kickstarter version, I'll buy it. And I ended up buying a secondhand copy Kickstarter version that someone sold on Board Game Geek, and they even painted the Hellboy, which is pretty cool. But Hellboy, the board game, is my go-to dice chucking dungeon crawler. It does it so well. I've played Imperial Assault and Descent and Claustrophobia and a bunch of other of these like dice chucking dungeon crawls, and this one's by far my favorite. It's not my favorite dungeon, that's Gloomhaven, but this is probably my second favorite dungeon crawl. And in the game, you are taking Hellboy or whoever character from the Hellboy series to go out and just shoot up some frogs, basically. You're going and you're uncovering different things. But what's cool is as the game actually has different scenarios, and there's a boss for every scenario. And even though there's 6 different scenarios, it's not like a legacy you play it once and done, because there's a lot of variability with what can actually spawn in specific spots. Especially if you have the Kickstarter stuff, because then it ramps up. And I mention this because the new Kickstarter is going to be out soon, and they're going to bring it all back with some more expansion. So I'm really excited about that, because I'm definitely going to be backing all of that. But this is a really cool system because, again, you're rolling dice, but what's interesting about it is you have different stats, and depending on what stats you have, you get to roll those dice. And it'll be like a better set of dice. Like there's like red dice and, kind of like how Descent was, where it's like green and yellow and all that stuff. So there's better dice and there's worse dice depending on what you're doing. But what I like most about this is there's no active turns. On your turn, you actually have like action cubes. You have 3 action cubes, and you're deciding how you want to allocate them. And you can allocate it like, all right, I'm going to move in with Hellboy. I'm going to shoot up these guys, and then you can come in and do this. And you're really talking out with your partner, which is great because I play solo. So I'm just talking to myself, which is great right now. But if you're playing with someone, that you can really play, that's not, like you're playing together to think it out, this is a great game for that. It's not going to solve the quarterbacking issue. But what's really cool about this is that those action cubes, not only can you use them to like skip turns and you do some, I do some, then you do some, and I do some. You could actually give your action cubes to other players to make their dice rolls better. So you can upgrade their dice to the next higher level up one. And it's just so elegant. It's so quick to just jump in and play and get out, and that's what I love about it. There's so many things I could love about it.
What's the gameplay on it about?
What do you mean?
Like how long is a one scenario go?
Okay. So they range. There's short scenarios, medium scenarios, and long scenarios. The shortest ones, if you're playing and you know exactly what you're doing, could take like an hour and a half. The longer ones I heard are like in the 3-4 hour range. But I haven't done those yet. I've only done the shorter ones solo. And it could go quicker if you really know things. I think I could play a 60-minute game of it if playing with someone that we both know how to play.
Right.
But,
no, I like a good co-op that allows you to share resources. I like, again, like you mentioned, the upgrading the dice. That's nice, that you're not having to upgrade your own and say, no, actually, let's upgrade yours. That's a nice little added bonus. In Marvel, Thanos Rising, actually, they have something like that in the sense that you can hand over a particular, upgrade piece for someone else. And I just always like that mechanism.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, I love that because again, you're working together, you're talking it over. And what's also really cool is that in this game, if you die, you're not actually dead. You're just knocked out, and the game will go where it just skips right to the boss phase, and then the boss comes out, and then you have the final confrontation. So it could be like, oh, you got knocked out and you wake up, and I love that.
Kick them while you're down.
There's no player elimination there. Yeah, and but then after the boss comes out, then there's player elimination, but it ends so quickly after that point. Yeah.
Well, no, it looks like we've settled on your number 4. Let's go into Ryan's number 4.
Speaking of settling, my number 4 is actually a game by David Turksey. This is the one that I've seen the most of as far as my 5. The name of it has been seen more than anything. And unfortunately, I see it in a lot of sold piles, and people are selling it for like $20 or $25 for this copy. But this game is really, really good. It's Dice Settlers. Dice Settlers is one of David Turksey's games. And in this game, I don't know if any of you have played Quarriors or Marvel Dice Masters, I think is what it's called. I'm not really sure.
It is.
But in this game, you have dice, and each of them have a specific role depending on, each of them have a specific thing that they do depending on the face that shows when you roll it. So you're rolling these dice, and there are pilgrim hats, and you can use those to manipulate the other dice. And then after everyone's done changing their dice, then it goes in turn order, and one person takes 2 actions, depending on the dice that they have. So if they have 3 or 4 different kinds of dice that do different things, they can only choose 2 of them. But you can gather resources, you can do area control. And that picture that you see right here, if you see the hexagons near the back with the houses on it, that's area control. You're moving your persons around, and each tile that you land on can give you a special benefit, like allowing you to throw more dice, or allowing you to manipulate more dice, or get more technology. There's an action where you can get technology to upgrade the actions that you do. And those are those technology cards that you see towards the front left-hand side of the screen. And it's a really fantastic way. I feel like this is quite a bit better than Couriers. I have actually played Couriers, but this has a lot more to it, where, like I said, it's area control, it's resource management, and you're spending these resources to get victory points. And the deluxe edition is just very nice too, because it has the upgraded components. This one isn't. But in this game, it's a tug of war between all sorts of areas. If you have an area and you really want to keep it, you're going to try to build that up. But at the same time, you should really try to spread out a little bit, because there's a majority at the end of the game where if you have the most tokens there, you're going to get the most victory points on that spot. And some of these technologies are fantastic too. Some of them let you build 2 at a time, or kick somebody out of a spot that they already have. And you're just going to keep on doing this until victory, which is basically when the victory point tokens run out. And I just think it's a really fantastic game that a lot of people are just getting rid of. And I can kind of see, because it's a lot of just rolling the dice and like manipulating it. But I feel like it's a lot more than that. And there's just a lot of different strategies you can go for. And so it depends on that. So I don't see why a lot of people are selling it, but people have reasons. But I really enjoyed this game a lot, and it's on one of my top shelves actually right there.
Ooh. This one looks interesting. That's again, all the game. I like to say, as we were preparing for this, I was most excited about the games I'd want to play.
Mm-hmm.
I had not necessarily heard of, because I had not heard of this one in particular, I have to admit. And when I think about it, it doesn't look like, does that space expand as you go? Like how much table presence does it really take by end of game?
Oh, it can be huge. It depends on who takes those kinds of actions. There are each color dice. There's a couple different color dice, and each different colored dice has more of a specific action on that die than the others. Mm-hmm. And one of the most common ones is the one where you take out a tile and place it on the board. There is a stack though, and the stack is as high as the number of players. There's a specific ratio, and when that stack runs out, that's also an end game trigger right there. So it can be big if you have more players, but a lot of this game is simultaneous. You roll the dice at the same time, you manipulate your dice at the same time, but only the actions are the different parts, so it can go fairly quick as well. I would say this is good at 3 or 4. I've only played it at 2 and one time at 3, but I can see it expanding and being a better game. Speaking of expansion, the expansion called the Western Sea is really hard to find, but they finally came out with it in either Card House or a Miniature Market or something like that. But they finally started developing it again.
Nice. Well, I'm hoping people could come here, start thinking about some of these games, and maybe some of the games that they've cut and forgot about that they loved. That's one thing I hope, if anyone watches this, they start thinking about. For me, this is not a game I've forgotten about loving. I love this game. My son and I have played this a lot. I've taught this game at my local library through my board game club, and that is Crows. Crows is this really fun game. It starts out with a few tiles on the board, and you're going to pick up and lay a tile in between somewhere. And essentially what you're doing is you're placing these tiles that either have these trees with X amount of crows on it, which if you do that, you would put those crows on the table. And there's also essentially shiny objects. Ooh. And when you start putting the shiny objects in and around the board, the crows are flocking to them. What you want is where you put your piece, and you can see some of them here. You've got that yellow, red, and blue piece. You want to get the most crows flocking to you. So it's a kind of a spatial awareness game in that way. But what's really fun about this is also the fact that if too many crows come to you, which is a movement that you're going to try to do to your opponents, then the crows kind of all circle around and then start moving around to new spaces. So I believe it's 5 or 6 of them. But when you get too many of them, bam, you're really only going to end up with one. So you want to be really careful about where you're going, especially based on if you're going first or third or fourth on that particular round, because you want to be mindful of that. Oh, but Ryan could go and make it so I end up busting, so to speak. And there is that, you see that garbage, by the way, everyone gets one of those, and that essentially kind of blocks the crows from coming. But if you use it, it's part of a tiebreaker where if someone didn't use it, they might actually, that's one of the tiebreakers, you wouldn't win. But it's a useful tool to have in the game. It's a fun little game. It's got these great little crows. I highly recommend it. This one, just for everyone's record, is ranked 3,928 on Board Game Geek, but it's 223 on Abstract. Wow. So, but it's really pretty decent spot on Abstract, but very high overall. So I don't know. For me, perfect fit for this. Definitely an underrated game. So crows.
Nice. I get a Alfred Hitchcock vibe looking at that.
Yes. You definitely play. And the first player, by the way, the player goes first is like the last person who saw a crow. That's what they say. So
come on.
I laugh because my son legitimately has been the last person to see a crow most of the times. And if he knows we're playing it, he will look for crows. That's the best part about it. But yeah, crows, highly recommend it. Check it out. It's pretty easy to find. You can find it. I know I saw it at the local store recently.
Cool. So. All right. I'll check it out. Well, I'm going to bring one in. You ready?
I'm ready.
This was my favorite game of 2019 until I played Marvel Champions, but this was Detective City of Angels. All right, so first of all, this game would have been perfect during the pandemic. I've still yet to play it during the pandemic, but in the game, it's kind of like a Sherlock Holmes consulting detective mystery game where you're trying to figure out who killed this person with what, and what was the motive. And you're going around hard-boiled cops and you're working for yourself trying to figure out who did it with what and why. But not only is that going on, one player acts as what's called the chisel, and that player is in charge of the AI. So one player knows exactly how, but they're not out of the game. They're actually a little more in the DM way, and they could actually win the game if the detectives don't figure out the crime in time. And what's going to go on is when they want to go interrogate a suspect, the chisel has like this sheet and these cards, and they hand out the answers to those people, and the answers are already pre-printed, and it'll either be truth or false or somewhere in between. And the detective has the option to muscle in and to kind of figure out, all right, now you got to, shaking them and tell me, come on, tell me the truth. And then they'll be like, okay, I know the truth. Or like, get off me, coppa, you ain't know nothing. So
sounds like a good story game.
It is a great story game. So what's going to go on in that case is basically you can use this as, if you successfully call their bluff, you get to get like a point towards a future thing where you can actually start knowing clues, and you can use those for specific special actions. Or if you're wrong, the chisel gets a point towards them, and they can prevent the detectives from doing things throughout the game. It's really cool. It's very much like the video game LA Noire, if you guys are familiar with that. And this game came out the same year as Detective: A Modern Crime Story came out. I have yet to play Detective: A Modern Crime Story, but what I've seen based off of this and this, I mean, this is like dripping with everything. Like, this is like dripping with theme. The art is gorgeous. They even have different open prologues and epilogues. And the prologues, they have a professional guy reading it, and you could pull it up, and it's like, like, it was a cold night down in LA. And it was just like, oh man, it's like really cool. And it's got music and stuff. And yeah, it just is like, man, this game is just, I want to play it. And what's awesome about it too, it plays great at 3, but it also plays awesome solo. So I mentioned that one player knows the answers. So because I own the game, I know I'm probably gonna be the chisel most of the time. So I've done a couple of the cases solo, and they have a special case book where you can actually go in, and it's actually very well done. And for a solo game, it's spot on. If you got this just for solo, I think you'd be very happy with it. And yeah, that's Detective City of Angels.
How many stories does it have? Because it sounds like that after you do a story and you know the resolution of the case, you
can never do it again. That's correct. You can never do it again. I believe there's 6 in the base game. In the base game, there are 9 in the base game. I lied. There are 9 in the base game, and there's already 2 expansions. I think the expansions add like 3 or 4, and they range in difficulty from easy to hard. I think the hard ones are called like hard boiled. And then they also have ones that actually lead up into each other.
Are there fan-made ones of this kind of thing too?
They gave just like how Gloomhaven did it. They gave the materials to the fans to actually make their own cases. There's a whole Facebook community that does it. Yeah. So I've actually been really tempted to make one, but I'm waiting to play more of them because the instructions on how to make one and the process gives away some of the spoilers. So I want to play more cases and then I'm going to make one. Awesome. But yeah, this is a really, really gorgeous game. So if you have a chance to play it, play it.
Well, so you did also mention. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say we're going to Ryan's.
Oh yeah.
Well, one quick question about that too. You said that one person knows the answers.
Yes, one person knows the answers.
So that sounds like you could potentially actually play a scenario twice or more if the person who did the scenario originally and knows the answer plays that person that knows the answers.
Well, yeah, well, you're right. So if you're playing as the detective, the next time you play, you could play as the chisel.
There you go.
But you have to play with completely new players.
Right. Yeah. Right. Of course.
But hypothetically, the point is you play this with a group of players. You then play with Ryan and I. You're the chisel. We're the detectives. 2 times. Right. No problem.
We're the gumshoes.
Right. Because you can only be a detective truly once. Every other time you could be the chisel.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. All right. Well, my number 3 is, I think, one of the best push your luck games I've played. It's very family friendly as well. I actually cheated with this one a little bit too, because there's actually 2 games of the exact same variety. And so I put both of them on there. The picture that you're going to see is of the Adventurers, the Temple of Chak. But the other one is called the Pyramid of Horus. And in case you wanted to see what they look like, this, oh no, a squirrel fell down. This is the cover of both of them. They were done in 2009 and 2011. But the game is essentially you are archaeologist or a band of people who are going into either the temple or the pyramid, and you're trying to get all these treasures. But in Indiana Jones style, the temple is collapsing, or there's monsters or deadly alligators. There's actually alligators in the Pyramid of Horus. In the Temple of Chak, there's actually a wall that closes in, and you really want to stick around. It's actually in the picture in the back. It's already closed, but you really want to try to stay there as much as possible and decipher glyphs, because that'll help you cross that lava river that's right there. And after you pass the lava river, you're going to make it to a roaming, like a raging river that's underground, and you can try to climb your way out of it and try to find treasures in that river. But if you don't get out of the river in time, you're going to fall into the pit that's right underneath that bridge over there. And the entire time all of this is happening, you'll see that boulder there. That boulder will move, and it gains momentum too. So after the first entire set of turns, you roll a die, 1 die, and if it's a 3 or higher, it moves 1 space. Next turn after that, you roll 2 dice, and every 3 or higher, it goes 1 space. And it keeps on doing that until you use all 5 dice, and then just continues using 5 dice from that point in time. But that's the Temple of Chak. The Pyramid of Horus, you're actually going in and you're trying to go into this crocodile pit to get treasures. You're trying to open sarcophagi and get treasures, all while mummies are walking around and you don't want to cross their path. And after everybody's turn, what you're going to do is you're going to pull a random number from a bag, and that is a stone. And the stone falls from the ceiling and it blocks a tile area. And that tile area can no longer be crossed. And you're trying to get all these treasures as much as you can before you're blocked in. You have to try to make it out with as much treasure as possible. Now, the interesting mechanic with this as well is it seems kind of simple because you're just going in and you're getting stuff. So why is that so difficult besides all these things happening? Well, that's because this game set up a kind of mechanic where depending on how much weight you're carrying, you have fewer actions. So there's 5 dice in both games, and if you are carrying 0 to 3 items, then you can roll all 5. Oh, sorry. You gain an action per roll that is a 2 or a higher out of all 5 dice. If you're holding 4 or 6 items, then you can only do gain actions depending on 3 or higher on all the dice. If you get 7 to 9 items, it's a 4 or higher. And if you have 10 to 12, you can only do an action on a 5 or higher in all of these dice. And so it has the mechanic of you're weighing yourself down by carrying all this stuff. And so you have to balance trying to get in there and get the better stuff, and then trying to leave as much as possible and maintain enough actions to get out before you get crushed or you get trapped or mummies and things like that. So it's a really fantastic push your luck. It's pretty quick. It is family oriented, even though there's like crocodiles. It's literally just a card. It's a card representing weight, or a wound will take away one of your weight. So it counts as a card towards that weight limit. But yeah, that's the game. You just get out, get in, get stuff, and get out.
Yeah.
I was thinking of Clank with the getting in and getting out as quickly as possible. But it's which is obviously there's much more to that game, but I really like the idea though of it sounds like the obstacles and the challenge of, I want a little bit more, and that push your luck is in the greed. Whereas
yes, it is.
It felt like a better deep sea adventure when I played it. If you've ever played deep sea adventure, that's a similar thing where you're in a submarine going down, getting treasures and going up. But the more things you have, the slower you go. And this one definitely does that better, I think.
No, I'd like that. I'd like to, that sounds fun, and definitely sounds great for family. As you said, it sounds like it'd be a really good one with the kids. So
for sure.
And I would say kids, and when I say family, I don't always mean kids. Sometimes I mean just like the adults who have not quite started playing more advanced games, and not even advanced by many people's minds, but they're playing the Scrabble or the Monopoly, and they're now trying to. So this is a good step up. It sounds like,
right?
The game that I have was introduced to me by actually one of the people who's been on this show a lot. That's Anthony Batista. That's Board Game Dads. Go check out his channel if you haven't. I remember playing at his house about 2 years ago. And as sometimes happens when I play a game with him, I end up buying it. And this is one of those. And that is a game called Histrio. I love this game. You are essentially a troupe of actors come to entertain the king. And you've got to get your troupe of actors together. You were trying to collect these cards. And there's essentially eight places you can visit. Now, similar to when I was talking about Go Nuts for Donuts, when you're trying to pick a spot to go, you're doing that here. There's 8 spots, however, instead. And once you've gone to one in a round, and there's only 2 full rounds, you cannot go there again. So you want to pick carefully. Now, if you go there and someone else goes there, those cards that are below are now discarded. And they have emotions on them. And that is either going to be comedy or it's going to be tragedy. And that's going to shape that's going to shape kind of the mood of the king and what does he want to see. So now it's shifting what kind of cards you're trying to get, because you want to entertain and get the most points at the end of the game, but all the points are going to be scored based on the king's mood in terms of what he wants to see. It's a really neat game. I think where maybe some people it fell short is because it's 2 rounds, it can be tough to get enough victory points to win. And maybe that's it fell short for some people. But for me, thematically, it was so much fun. It's really enjoyable, and it's got this beautiful stage that you use to kind of track it. It's just looks great. It has such great presence, and the cards and the art look really nice. So for me, a fun game. The thematics of it work. The gameplay of it works really well. And in trying to get those points, it can be a little tricky, but you do want to be strategic. And again, it's a relatively quick game at 2 rounds, so it can play easily in that 45-minute time span with 3 or 4 people. I found, if you know how to play, it doesn't take that long, and great little game. And again, I used to act, so I think I get attached to that old actor scheme too. But a lot of fun, and it again, the presentation of it, I just have to say, if you saw on the table, you'd say, "Oh, I want to try that." So I don't know if you guys have played this, but
never heard of it.
I haven't, but it definitely sounds like a slim down version of a phenomenal game called Shakespeare, which if you're into old school acting, I really strongly suggest. Because it sounds just like it, because you put on different kind of plays in your stage, and you have actions from a character, and whatever characters you used, you can't use them on the next round. So it sounds kind of similar to that, and there's also an old school like theater theme. But this seems like a slimmed down, very nice, compact tile laying version of that game, and so yeah, I mean, I definitely would give it a shot.
What are the points like? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say the points can vary because they're really ranging on the cards, and some of the actors have abilities that will give you capability of maybe changing or like switching something around. So there you do have some of those abilities in there that is important to note. It's not just cards with like these point values. There's the idea is you're going to try and think about where your opponent wants to go, because if you go to a spot and you're the only one who goes there, you're going to get the cards. So you want to get those cards because they're valuable to you. But then suddenly you got the cards you wanted, and because both of you went to the wrong spot, now the king wants a tragedy, and I just got all the stuff for comedy, and I'm just like, So I love the interactiveness. That's the thing I gotta say. It's an interactive game. You're constantly kind of like in the game and in the moment, because you're always watching what's happening. It's a simultaneous action that's happening, and there's hand management and all that happening. So yeah, really good game. Happy to break it out with both you guys anytime. It's a lot of fun.
I'll try it out
for sure.
All right, I'm ready for my number 2.
Do it.
And this is exciting because this game is actually in my top 10 board games of all time.
Oh my goodness, it's Loop and Chewy. It's Loop and Chewy.
You stop with that.
It's Loop and
Stop
Chewy.
with that. It's the next. My number 1 on this list, by the way, is not going to be my top 10. I'm rating these in like number of people who actually voted on these. So, anyways, my number 2 is my number 8 board game, I think, on my top 10, and this is Gaslands. Yeah, and I have the book with me right here. It's the updated rules. Okay. Now, Gaslands is a bit more of a miniatures game, because it is a miniatures game, as opposed to a board game. And Gaslands is a post-apocalyptic murder fest where you're fighting each other with these cars. You could do different scenarios, but the best scenario is the death race one, where that's the first scenario you start with, and it's probably the best, where you're just going through gates, and then you get to shoot each other, and either first person to make it to the finish line or the last player standing wins. And what's great is I just showed you this book because it's a DIY miniatures game, and it's intended for you to play with using Hot Wheels. And it's so cool because you could just go to the grocery store and pick up some board game pieces now, which is really cool for like $1. And people have been modifying it. You see these cars that someone modified. And the game is similar if you've played the X-Wing game, which is in the Board Game Geek top 1000. The X-Wing miniatures game, where you're taking the templates and putting them in front of the pieces and moving them to those templates. This works exactly like that, but man, does it do it so much better. It's just like, this is like Twisted Metal. This is just like run in and there it is. There's X-Wing. And seriously, this game does it so much better. And it's not, I don't think it's loved because it's not a Star Wars game, but it could be a Star Wars game because you could use your own miniatures. We could port over.
As you're saying this, I actually should point out, I have those. I don't play the game anymore. I just have the Millennium Falcon. Just looks really cool.
It does look cool.
But I don't play the game. It didn't becoming a love like a lot of people I knew. Yeah. So what you're talking about intrigues me, because when you're saying it does it better, I wanted more from it.
Well, here's really cool part. So one of the rules is you touch it, you use it. And in the game, you can't figure out what placement you want to use. You touch the template, you're going to use it, even if you can't use it. And you could collide into people. There's whole rules about collisions and blowing up. And there's all sorts of, like, there's machine guns over there, but then there's like rules for like remote control car with like dynamite stuck to them, and you could just like run into people. And man, and there's like bus rules, and there's truck rules, like big trailer tractors, and man, it is a blast. I love this game. I recently played it with one of my wife's coworkers' boyfriends, who turns out he's huge into Gaslands. So he played in my backyard on like a ping pong table, and man, we had a blast. It was so much fun. I love this game, and we're gonna play it. We're gonna play it as soon as both of you.
I'm sure you had mini blasts and mini explosions.
Oh yeah, we did, and it was great because he had a bus, and it was 3 of my cars, and it came down to my bus pretty much just kamikazing my car, just going right in and just like.
Question: Could Chris potentially use his Millennium Falcon in this game?
Yes. So you can use all sorts of miniatures. They say that you don't need to use Hot Wheels, and they have rules for flying vehicles and all this sort of stuff.
So wait a minute. Could I bring the Impreza from Supernatural into the fight?
Yes, you can.
Oh,
you have
to. Good. Sam and Dean are coming.
You have to. Yeah. I encourage everyone, bring your own Hot Wheels, and it's so much fun. Yeah. This is this game. Yeah. I want to play it right now.
I'm gonna bring one of my son's toy cars.
You should. Yeah.
Well, instead of bringing your son's toy car to the screen here, why don't we bring your game to the screen? What is your number 2?
My number 2 is a game that I played about a year ago. I managed to just recently get it back into my collection. My wife really liked it a lot, and it has I'm just going to go ahead and say what it is first. It's called Space Gate Odyssey. It was done in 2019, and it has fantastic art by Vincent Dutray, one of the best artists I know. But in this game, I don't know if you've heard of this game. It's called Beyond the Sun. But I wanted to bring it to that attention that this game is, believe it or not, rather similar to quite a few things that Beyond the Sun has, but this is earlier than that. This has a few more extra things as well. Instead of a tech tree, you are making your own spaceship. Let me go ahead and start by saying, if you notice in the top right hand side of that picture, there are 5 rectangular looking colored spots, and those particular spots are action selections. So at the start of your turn, you're going to take one of your pawns from a spot that's in there and put it into a different spot, and then do those actions. Blue lets you move characters that are in your spaceship into blue spaces. It also, red lets you move into red spaces, and green lets you move into green spaces. So you have to be careful how you set up your own spaceship in your map. The yellow tile that you see right there allows you to gain more tiles to put into your spaceship. So you're going to put a person there, and you're going to choose between these tiles. There's a nice little 3D looking staircase looking thing with all the different colors and the different kinds of tiles that you can take, but you're going to add them to your space station. And then the white ones are going to introduce your space station with a bunch of new workers. So one of the tiles that you could get is a platform. I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's a platform where it shows a certain number of squares, and then after you activate it, by activating, by the way, you have to move a person into it. That person is removed from your space station, but it flips over the tile because they come into play face down, and then they activate by turning face up. Some tiles are those gates that allow you to bring in workers. Some of them are gates where if it fills up, you send them out to planets, and these planets are an area control kind of aspect, kind of like Beyond the Sun, where you're trying to, and they're pretty cool too. If you've ever played Horrified, where each villain in Horrified, you have to defeat it in a certain kind of way. In this, every planet has a certain kind of way for you to fill it up and get points on it. Like there are some that say you have to place a pawn on one planet here, and then the rest that you send out go into the center. And if you have the most in the center, you get a lot of points. And if you at least have presence in each of these like tiny outer ones, you get the maximum points for that too. So there's also like a snake one where you're going against your opponent in this like snake kind of form, and whoever has like the most in that snake gets these victory points. And after you pass a certain amount of points, after you pass a certain amount of people, you get points collectively as you gain more and more people on that planet. But there's a bunch of different planets, and they're all named for famous astrologists or astronomers, or like people who write books on it. And like Stephen Hawking is the main planet right there.
Oh, cool.
And it's actually quite fantastic. You have to really, really think about how you're setting up your map. You have to think about what actions you do. Oh, and as far as the actions are concerned, you can gain more people in those action spots and robots, which don't move. So you can't actually move them to a different spot. But if you pick a if you pick a spot that has one of your own people and one of your opponent's people, if you take a person and put it in there, you activate it first, and that means you have 2 people in there. So you have 2 action points to spend on, like, let's say moving into pink spots. And then there's a follow mechanic. So there's an I act, you follow, where your opponent, since he had 1 in there, then they get to move 1 pink. And then after everyone's done with everything, then it's the opponent's turn. And the whole same thing happens and continuously keeps on happening until a certain number of planets are conquered. And that is this game. And there's, again, a lot of similarities between Beyond the Sun and this. So if you actually like Beyond the Sun, I suggest trying this. Just try it. It's a really, really good, fun game that like really has you thinking.
I first heard about this game this past year because it was on 2 top 100s on the Dice Tower. Both Z and Mike DeLisio had it on their lists, and I never heard it before. It looks really cool. I really do want to try this one out.
Vincent Dutrait.
Yeah, and I can't believe that it's a game that's outside the top 1,000 because it looks great.
So that's the interesting thing I have to say about this whole process is some of the games I realized were in the top 1,000 to begin with, and then some of the games that were like in the 3,000s, and one game I like is in the 7,000s apparently. So I was just kind of like laughing about that. I will say the game that I have next is definitely not in a bargain bin for me, but it is called Bargain Quest, and I love this game. Now, this game definitely has quite a few rankings. It falls in that between 6 and 7 area, but I love this game for a few reasons. And it's important to point out this one ranks just out of a top 1,000 at 1,293. This one, Renegade Games, which people, if you've watched the channel, know I like a lot of Renegade Games. What I like about Bargain Quest is it takes the story of the hero going to fight the monster and it flips it on its head, because we in this game are the shopkeeper. We're the shopkeeper. We're going to have goods in the base game, and we're going to pick a good and we're going to put it in our store display. Funny thing, that game in the store display, we cannot sell it. So that's going to draw the hero in. That may be one of our best things. That's going to help decide who gets to get the first pick of the hero that we're going to kind of have go to our fight. Unfortunately, we can't sell it, so the other goods are the things that you can sell. And based on the amount of money that hero has, because they all have different amounts of money, then they go into your store, you sell them as much as you can sell them, and they go off to fight. Now, I have to tell you, and I'm going to bring up a screenshot actually here for this, because it's just too good to not share. And that is a shot of just a visual of some of the cards. And that I'm going to bring right up front here. If you look at this, one of my favorite, and this is one of the fun of the game, not all the items are good. Not all the items are good at all. The fancy hat, as an example, essentially does nothing. It does absolutely nothing. It is a fancy hat. And what's cool about this game that I should stress is it doesn't matter if you win your hero goes and wins every fight against the monster. It doesn't. But you can lose. As a group, if you do not defeat all the monsters, and there's a large variety of them, the whole group loses. So you can only be so cheap in the process. You are going to win by being the most successful shopkeeper and making that most money, but you do got to win sometimes. So there's a nice balance to strike. The items in this are just really fun. One of them that was on that screen is an invisible cloak. And it's literally worth It can't be on the display, but it's worth 5 defense, plus 5 defense. So, but you can never use it as a display item. And so there's got a lot of these little quirks to them. Great game, really like it. And again, it's just kind of it twists a few things on the head of the normal story that you would play in a medieval go fight the monster story. So that is my choice for number 2.
I've been wanting to try that one out. I know Shut Up and Sit Down did a video on it, and that's why I'm also shocked that it didn't make the top 1,000. Because I know they said good things, and it was around the same time that the Kickstarter was happening too.
Yep.
So, man,
I have owned this game, and I understand that it's better with more people. But
it is
as soon as I got it, that's when the pandemic hit. So
we can solve that. This one is fun. I'd say 3 people it's fun. 4 people gets really crazy because what you're trying to put in that front display becomes really priority. Because the thing that you might want to put in the front display might be your best item, but then you can't sell it, and that's going to be worth the most money. So you're constantly battling. Now there's a black market expansion which gets really fun. But all that said, it's just a great game. Base game itself has a ton of cards. So if you get the base game, honestly, you're probably fine for a while.
Okay.
I do like there's a pack in it called Acquisitions Incorporated, which is a play on Clank Legacy.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Fun.
But that's my number 2. Ryan, we are hitting the number 1s. Before we do the number 1s, I got to ask. We're not going to do it just yet. Any honorable mentions? Anything you did not mention today that almost made the list? I will just say I almost mentioned by party game. I actually almost mentioned this little tiny card game called Ninjutsu. It is just a fun little game that essentially you want to get to 21 points, which sounds like a game maybe you've played before. But all the different card actions are, you can play them as treasures or hidden treasure cards. And so if they're face down, your opponents can play them face down or face up, but you may actually steal a card in the game and then get hurt by it because it's a trap. So it's a lot of fun. This is ranked 7,139, but it is a fun game and it deserves to be higher in my book. So that and I'm a Top Duel were my 2. So
mine that almost made the list but didn't is number 1064, and that is Kalis 1303, which is an updated version of the classic worker placement game Kalis. I actually recently played this with Squirrel and a friend over Tabletop Simulator, and this is a great game. This is a really fun worker placement that is very mean. It can be very mean. It can be very, very mean, but it is great.
I've never played it, but I'm surprised that's out of a top 1,000 based on what I've heard.
Well, it's because I think here's my theory. Here's my theory why it's not in the top 1,000. I feel like because it is a reprint, essentially. Oh, it's a reworking of an older game. I feel like a lot of people aren't going towards that. A lot of people aren't going towards like these reprints. I feel like they'd be more so inclined to try something new. And Kalis is more of a classic. So I feel like that might be why people weren't going to Kalis 1303. I could be wrong, but that's my theory. But give it time. It'll probably go up in the top 1,000.
Yeah. I guess my honorable mention, thanks for bringing that up, is a hidden role game, which is great for larger groups, and it's called Saboteur. Saboteur is actually only 1,096 as far as ranking is concerned, but a lot of people have heard of Saboteur. Saboteur is a fantastic little game where there's a card over here with the ladder going into the underground, and then there are 3 hidden cards on the end, and you're trying to, if you're a good dwarf, then you're trying to build cards to go towards those things so you can determine where the gold's at. If you're a saboteur, you don't want anybody to go there, so you're going to play cards that like block off paths or destroy paths, or you're going to stop them by destroying like your opponent's carts so that they can't take an action on that turn. And they're cooperatively trying to work together to fix the cart, or they're trying to go around the blocked path if you're a good person, and they're also trying to block the saboteurs from doing actions again. But it's a really, really fun hidden role game that I strongly suggest a lot of player counts. I managed to finally get the last promo for it, which is very, very difficult considering there's like world championship promos that only were given to those people. But I really like this game, and I can't wait to play it with like 6 people. Another game, if I had to mention it, was Fallout the game. Fallout the board game, believe it or not, is in the 1000s. It's in the early 1000s. I think it's like 1016 or something like that. But I do know the one flaw that the game has, but I think that flaw is can be overly looked over. Words can be looked can be looked over for the simple fact that this game is very, very, very true to the IP. Just like Fallout Shelter, the board game is, this one is really true to the IP. The flaw of this game is the fact that you really want to play this game a long period of time. It's a game that's meant to be a long game with like the story, and you're like going into these vaults and you're like exploring them and you're getting these best equipment. There was a game where I literally did that. I went into 2 maps tiles over and I found a vault. I went into the vault, and the entire game I was in that vault because it was a long vault. And I got the best armor in the game. But by the time I had finished doing that, the game was over. So the issue with the game is it has a timer, but it wants you to play the game as long as possible to explore all these things. And so like those two can't work together. So that's the flaw with the game. I understand that the cooperative Atomic Bonds makes this a lot better, so I have to try it with that. But Fallout the board game is up there in my honorable mentions, and so is Saboteur.
Awesome. All right, let's hit those number ones. Espen, you're up first.
All right, my number 1 is number 3090 on Board Game Geek, my lowest entry in this. This is a game I've been doing a lot solo in the pandemic time, and that is this awesome dice chucker, which is Vengeance. I've mentioned this before in my favorite solo games. Let's talk about Vengeance again. So Vengeance is a revenge movie in a box, and in the game you're basically have to take out you have to go to these gang hideouts and take out the boss. And before you do that, you go into montage sequences where you get to power up and gain new abilities. And on your turn, you're rolling a bunch of dice, and they got like handguns on them or katanas, and you need to figure out, of those dice, how do you want to allocate them? Do you want to use them to do like special moves? Like you'll have like a foot for movement, and then like a katana, so you could do like a running slide, and just it does like damage to people. And you build those combos, so you get to, if you think about it like those fighting games like Street Fighter, or where you go like forward BB, right, or whatever, like down forward B or whatever, right? It's kind of like that, where you get to decide what combos you want. And then you roll the dice and you try to get those combos to work based off of what you got. And you have like 3 turns essentially to kill everyone in the room and make it out. And you basically just go into 3 different rooms that are like that. And then it's game over. And here's the thing. I have only played it solo. I know there's people that actually prefer this game solo. And I could see why. I haven't played with other people. I would love to play with other people. But the solo mode is great because the solo mode actually has specific missions that are tied to you. So like one character, you're like a grandma that your grandson was kidnapped by this gang. And so you got to go in and take them out. And they do like gruesome stuff. Like you take out like eyeballs and stuff like that. I mean, it just says that you're missing an eye.
Wow, grandma.
I know. But it's so, oh man, this game is just like it's so good. It's got that awesome vibe, and the new expansion from it actually adds like second acts and like epilogues into the solo modes, and I haven't done that yet, and I'm really excited to try that. But this game is it's just a blast to just run in and beat people up and try to figure out your allocation of dice. And if you like doing that, like rolling dice and then figure out what you're doing, it's great for that. And that's why I think it's probably best solo, because I can't imagine the downtime. No. Especially if you play with a bunch of people. But man, this game is so good. And I know there's a lot of people that started doing solo board game because of the pandemic. And if you haven't tried this one, you really, 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 really should, because it's so good. And it's Vengeance.
Should we really? Yes,
we really do. Yeah, I really do.
Yeah. I'm intrigued. That's what I'll say.
I guess you really should try it too.
Yeah,
really,
buckets
really,
of plastic. Just
All right. We've got Squirrel's Choice here. Your number one.
My number one is one that someone in this group, it's also their number two of all time, and that is Adventure. That is Lupin Chewy.
Let's get out of here. Stop that.
Okay. No, my number one is a game that actually has been praised by quite a few people. It's actually really been praised by quite a few people, but it's still 1,000, I want to say 100 something. And it's also a game that's really, really well geared for older kids or family in general. And it's done by Haba of all publishers. And it's designed by Kiesling and Kramer. That's a good design duo team that I'm sure a lot of games you are familiar with. But this game is called Adventureland. Adventureland is a fantastic game. It's the premise of this game is there are two things that you do on your turn. The first thing that you do is you flip over two cards. The cards, I don't know if you've played Bunny Kingdom, but it's similar in the fact that there are coordinates on the cards. Yeah. And there is a depiction of something on the card. So if you flip over a card, you might be placing a companion knight on a spot. And then you flip over another card and you're going to place a sword in a mountain spot. And that's the first thing that you do on your turn is flip over two cards and you place those things there. The second thing that you do is you move two of your people, or you do two movements, should I say. Now, the cool thing about this board is your people, your adventurers are on the very top left-hand corner of the board. You have one on row A, one on row B, one on row C, one on row D, and then you also have one on column 1, column 2, column 3, and column 4. You can only move them to the right or down, and you can't move them left. You can't move them back up. So you're going along and you're collecting these things, either swords or herbs, because there's an H in it, or companions. You're picking up companions on the way, or gold, if you notice the gold there in the river. And you're collecting these things for points depending on the scenario that you're playing. So in the base game, there are 3 scenarios. And the first one is you're getting immediate points based on once you pick up a gold, once you pick up a companion, and things like that. And other games give you points at the end of the game based on certain scenarios. Like there's a scenario where you want the most companions at the end of the game. So you're trying to pick up as many companions as you can. You don't get points immediately in this scenario. You only get them at the end of the game, and that's triggered in a different way. And so they made the same game work in 6 different ways, because the main base games has 3 scenarios, and the very hard to find expansion with Kings and Princesses has another 3. But you are going down, picking up stuff, going right, picking up stuff, and you're using them to defeat these fog creatures. You see one on the right-hand center where it has the red number 10 on it. But how it works is once you land on there, you'd allocate a certain number of swords to the combat, and the swords tell you how many dice you can roll. And you roll the dice and you add the total together, and if you defeat the fog monster, he comes to you and you get victory points. If you fail, or if you don't get enough after the dice roll, you can use herbs to increase the value. Also, if you picked up companions on the way, that increases your power overall as well. And it's just a super simple concept. I played it with my wife about 2 or 3 days ago, and she absolutely loved it. We're going to try to do a scenario 2 at some point in time, but this is a sorely low-rated game for some reason for having so many positive reviews from a bunch of people. So weird. I just wanted to put it out there again as another person with a lot of positive reviews for this game.
Yeah. No, and that's the theme I saw with a few things as I looked it up, and even in conversations as before I even talk about my game, I'll just say I had a bunch of conversations about my number one for this category on Twitter, and people were like, "Oh, I love that game." So I found it interesting. This one in particular, though, you're right. I've heard it a few times, even from reviewers, right? And reviewers in particular can often be the most critical, right? I mean, if we're talking about a game and we're trying to say, who we think the game is for, we're going to say the audience, right? And this sounds like it's for a lot of people. So
could it be is there a disconnect between, is it one of those things where it's like a disconnect between the art and the actual presentation of the game? Like, how you described it and what you showed me, I did not get that at all from looking at the box or the name. You know, the name is completely generic, and when you told me there's a board game called Adventureland, I immediately thought, oh, cool, another theme park board game. And then, and then you showed me, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's fantasy. Okay. Now, because how you're describing it, I really do want to try this. It sounds pretty cool. Like, it sounds like you're going essentially on quests around the board, you know. Yeah. But I don't get that at all by looking at this cover, and I don't know if that's the thing.
You know, Ryan, I thought about the movie. I'm gonna put like right. I immediately thought of the movie. Like that's true. And this one came out in 2015.
2015, yeah.
So I don't know. Sometimes it is disconnect with theme. I don't know. Regardless, we're talking about it. It sounds like it's a game a lot of people would enjoy. So maybe a few people will pull it out now and give it a shot.
Well, I have my copy that I was graciously given by Squirrel. So thank you, Squirrel.
Is it still sealed?
It's still sealed. I haven't touched it because, I'm still expecting it to be a different game. No, I'm kidding. I am going to play it though. Actually, you can see it. It's right under this box. Yeah.
When this pandemic is
we're definitely playing
when everyone's done with getting their shots and everything like that, I'm sure we'll play it together at some point.
Yeah, we haven't done it yet because there's no tabletop simulator mod yet.
Yes,
so
there isn't. So sad.
We got to save it for in person.
Well, I guess we saved mine for last, and
best for last.
It's going to be best for some. I don't know if you guys have played this one. I love this game. Ryan has heard me talk about this game before. This is a game. It is my favorite zombie game.
Oh, I know which one this is.
It is my favorite zombie game. And there's a lot of zombie games out there. But this is my favorite zombie game. It's Hit Z Road.
Yeah.
It is such a fun game. Thematically, this is essentially a game that where you read the book. It's like, well, when my family and I were making our way across the country during the zombie apocalypse, we made a board game. So you're playing the board game by the kid who traveled across the country during the zombie apocalypse about traveling and surviving a zombie apocalypse, which is very meta. But
it's so cool.
But the thing that blows my mind, and I pulled out the cards, and I'm going to hold them up. But it's neat because I have some callbacks. So this is one of the cards.
Oh, is that Ticket to Ride?
Yep.
Is that like Seven Wonders or whatever? Seven Wonders. Yeah.
And then you got
but that's hilarious.
You got these cards the first set's made out of a playing deck. So they mix it up. There's 3 parts to the game. There's 3 parts to the journey. But what's great, let me start with the gameplay on this one. First and foremost, your resources are precious. But your resources are also your bidding mechanism to have the first choice to go on whatever path you want to pick. So if the 3 of us are playing, there's 2 cards down on the table. There's 3 sets of 2 cards, and we're going to bid to pick who's going to take what path, right? You're going to be bidding your resources. That's ammunition. That's food. That's important stuff, right? Early on, you don't encounter too many zombies. You might get food. You might encounter a person who turns out to help you or hurt you later. And it's always going to vary because there's cards that interact in different ways. But as you get to the later part of the game, you're going to get a card on the number 3 cards. I'm just taking a quick look here. There's one that has 6 zombies, right? Mm-hmm. So now I'm going to encounter 6 zombies. Crap, I don't want to do that. I'm going to give up as much gas as I can, or as much, I only got ammo, but if I can get past this and not have to do that one, do I risk my ammo? So you've got to make these important decisions. Where this game may lose some points, admittedly for some people, is yes, you can get eliminated. You can die.
No, it's a Martin Wallace game.
Yeah, so it's a Martin Wallace game.
I believe that.
Yeah. So, yes, you can die. But
are there loans?
Are there? There could be. Look, this looks more like in the weird Discworld category, right?
Look, I'll just say this: the art in this game, just to give you all an idea, fan-freaking-tastic. It looks beautiful. It's a fun game. It's very different than any other zombie game. I own. I'm turning around. I own multiple zombie games. For Tiny Epic Zombies is in my top 5 as well for zombie games actually. But I don't know. I don't need a big zombie game. This game is perfect. You can play with all ages. I love it. And this one is ranked, just so you know, 1,365. Thematically, it's 321 though.
Okay.
So rightfully so, it's higher up in thematics, but it's definitely, to me, better than plenty top 1,000 games on there. And we know how Board Game Geek can trend heavy, but this one definitely worth trying out. If you can buy it for like $15. It's not like it's going to break most people's banks either. So yeah, that's my choice. That is Hit Z Road. What a great game. I can't say a negative about it, to be honest. I mean, I don't mind the elimination either because zombies are trying to eat you. I
have to try this. I got it this past Christmas actually because I think it was like really cheap. It dropped down to like $17 or something on Amazon.
I think you can get for $17 now on Amazon.
Yeah,
it's inexpensive. I don't know. I love this. The box, literally, if you actually look at it, if you were to note, the box literally is crossed off.
Right.
It was originally my travel game. Yeah. And then instead he changed it to say my zombie game. They went, I'm a sucker for theme with good gameplay, and this hits all the notches.
So. It looks great.
Yeah.
I should try this. I heard it's solo too.
It does have a solo mode, yes.
I don't know how it is solo.
I have not done the solo mode. I can report back to you on that one. Maybe I've done it once, but it was a while ago, and I think I enjoyed it. But hit the road. That's what I would say. And before we hit Z Road, I do want to mention that I'm going to have a video on Thursday. I did not actually put it up on the channel yet. That'll probably go up tomorrow, so you'll be able to subscribe to join. But we're going to be talking about the Isle of Cats. Isle of Cats by Frank West. That is going to be the discussion on Thursday. Brian Chandler's coming back to the channel after me on the accessibility panel. And we're going to be talking about if that game is for you. So that's going to be, is this game for you? That's going to be on Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Other than that, Marvel Monday will come up the Monday that follows. So Thursday, Monday, standard schedule around here for the most part, usually at least some Monday programming. If you've got an idea for programming, you've got something you'd like to do, let us know. That's how Ryan got involved. And we always appreciate
Ryan's.
Yeah, Ryan's. That is true. Ryan's.
Actually, I think it's Ryan at that point.
Yes. Well, there's actually a third too, because neither one of you were the original Ryan.
Wow. Wow.
That hurts. Is his middle name Michael?
Because our middle names are Michael too. It's weird.
You know what? I do not know that answer.
Probably
we'll find Ryan. If you're listening to this, the other Ryan that is not on it, and your middle name is Michael, please let me know, because that was creepy. That'd be really creepy. Anything you guys want to share before we go? I know I already mentioned Marvel Monday for us, Ryan, or Ryan Espen. Squirrel, anything you want to mention in particular? Actually, I'll go to you first.
Well, I mean, just if you haven't watched the entire video, please just give it a shot. This entire video that we just did, because if you look at all 15 games that we mentioned plus the honorable mentions, I think there was like 5 of them. Then that's like 20 in general, well-rounded, well-themed, different mechanics all around the entire board. So just take a look. I'm sure there's a game out there for someone. Just take a look and listen to what we have to say about it, and don't take our word for it. Go get it, try it out.
A lot of these are in the bargain bin. So really seriously, pick up these bargain bin games, because sometimes they're great, other times they're not. But these we could say they're great.
I just saw, as an example, I've never played it, but Fairy Tiles at Barnes and Noble for $10.
Yeah.
And I mean, I didn't buy it because I in particular just did not want to add another game to the collection, but that's a game I've looked at. So that's a great example of one that I've heard great things about. And so take a look. I always say Barnes and Noble, check your friendly local game store. Barnes and Noble does really good deals sometimes in their clearance section, so it's hard not to look at it. But check that friendly local game store and get some recommendations from them as well. They've got some great ideas, and they can point you in the right direction. If you're local to Ryan Espen and myself in particular, Time Warp Comics is a fantastic
Cedar
place.
Grove, New Jersey. That's how you know.
Yeah, they will take very good care of you. Talk to Dave. Say
Yeah.
hi. Tell him we sent you.
He'll know.
I don't know if anyone's ever done that, so I just want to see that happen once. But thank you guys. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. Really glad we had a great time. I know that we were here for about 90 minutes tonight, but it was it was
great.
We had a little bit of 5-minute introduction, a little warm
Quality.
up, but yeah.
This is our nerddom. This is our geekdom. This is what we like to talk about. I can talk about it for hours more if I wanted to.
That's right.
We could. I question going into 5 hours of now not having games. So what I am going to do is say we'll be back. This whole group will be back, I'm sure, at some point soon. We've got a bunch of ideas on things we want to do. I'd also say go back, please watch the city titled games video we did. I'll drop a clip to the end of that once I'm able to on this video after tomorrow. And other than that, have a great night, everybody. And thank you so much for coming aboard the Tabletop Express. We'll see you all very, very soon.
Toot toot.
Bye-bye.